Here we're in the park, and this is sort of the center of Put-in-Bay. Got all your golf cart rentals, the boathouse. I mean, it's really pretty here. Hey, go ahead. Sorry about that. Cannon. Just got off the Jet Express. And you can see the boardwalk over here. They've painted that and redone that. It's really pretty spiffy. And you can get seafood over there, and the lobster bisque is to die for in a bread bowl. And then over here is the Isle of Gibraltar. And they have, I don't know, they got a bunch of a snake house over there where they test these water snakes. Oh, too much digital. I don't like that. And you can see the Miller Ferry out there. And you can see the construction on the Perry's Monument. We thought we was going to go up in that today, but it don't look like that's going to happen. There's a little story about Joseph de Riviera.
Okay. Do you want to go over to the frame?
Do you know where it's at? Isn't this park pretty? These old trees really make it look nice here. We're on the...
Well, good morning. My name's Janet. I'm going to be your driver or guide for at least part of your trip here. And welcome to Put-in-Bay. Put-in-Bay is the name of the village on South Bass Island. South Bass Island is about 3 miles long and a mile wide, and the village takes up about a quarter of it. Now, South Bass is part of a chain of islands, North Bass, Middle Bass, and South Bass.
Hey.
So named by the state of Ohio because of all the fish around them. Now, we're located in the western basin of Lake Erie, and this is the shallow end of the lake. There's about 20 islands in this area. And once you get east of Kelly's, which is the next island east of here, the water starts to get deeper and there are no more islands. For the most part, the water in here is about 20 to 30 feet deep. Lake Erie is the shallowest of the Great Lakes. If you look straight ahead there, you can see Middle Bass Island. We're coming up here now on Delaware Street. Delaware is named after one of the types of grapes that are grown here, not the state of Delaware. Now, at the turn of the century, and I mean the 1800s to the 1900s, most of the businesses here were owned by large corporations, like Schlitz Brewing owned a hotel that sat here on the right. It was called the BB. Took up the whole block. It burned down in 1932. But what Prohibition, especially Prohibition, came along, things kind of went downhill here. Things never have returned to the era what they were in that era. And today most of your businesses are locally owned. The carriage house there on the left, that was originally a saloon. Then during Prohibition it was a speakeasy called the Health Club. Now coming up on our right is Jose de Rivera Park. He's kind of what we call the father of Put-in Bay. He's the guy that got all this started here. And there were originally 13 hotels here in that earlier era. Only one still operates as a hotel. Off to the left, the Crescent Tavern. That was the Crescent Hotel. And then next to that is the Shirt Shack, and that started out as a casino. And beyond that, this red-brown building, the Brown House Bar, that was once an ice cream parlor. And next to that is the Park Hotel. Now the Park Hotel was built in the 1870s, and it is the only one of the original hotels that still operates and has always operated continuously as a hotel. The Country House here on the left is a gift shop. That was originally a hotel. Frosty's was the first brick building on the island, and it started out as a dry goods store. Now from about here on down, there was once a building called the Colonial Building. It was a two-story wooden building, and the entire second floor was a dance hall. It was built in 1905. And on the first floor, there was a bowling alley, a barber shop, and a grocery store, and the Beer Barrel Saloon, which back then, as now, was in the Guinness Book of World Records as having the world's longest bar, 405 feet. On Memorial Day weekend in 1988, in the early afternoon, the Colonial caught fire and it burned to the ground in less than 1 hour.
Wow.
It was a spectacular fire. There was people out throwing bags of ice on the top of their roofs to try to keep the sparks from touching those too. It started with a gas leak from a grill that went outside to cook chicken and hamburgers. Off to the left is the Valentine Doler building. Valentine Doler and De Rivera were kind of the original movers and shakers here. Doler was a clerk over in Sandusky, and De Rivera owned the island and got him to come over and take care of his business interests. And he put up a mercantile building there, and he also had what is now the boardwalk, was called Doler's Dock. And steamships would come here from Cleveland and Detroit and Toledo, and they would just bring people here for the day for excursions. They could get here in a matter of an hour or two. Kind of basically the same as now. Back then, though, they came for the wineries. Now it's bars. Now, Valentine Doler had 6 daughters, and he didn't want any of them to marry. Something to do with the money going out of his family, which I've never been able to figure out how that works when you don't have descendants. His oldest daughter did marry, and she had a son, but he had no children. So the last of the Doler girls died out here in the early 1970s and left the entire estate to the caretaker. Now this is now set up, this is the Doler Mansion, and it's set up as a museum-type facility. To give you an idea what life was like at the turn of the century. Now if you tell them you come in on the tour train, they will take $1 off the price of the tour. And a train comes by every hour. Does anyone want to get off here? Nope. Okay. We do have a lot of weddings and things. We've even had high school graduations in the wine garden here in the back on our right. We have a lot of weddings at that pavilion, and we don't need a lot of room for graduations because we don't graduate many students. We only have 80 to 90 in our school system at any given time. Now as we go down the hill here, if you look straight across, that is Gibraltar Island. And you can see what looks like the turret of a castle through the trees there. Now that island was sold to a man named J. Cook by De Rivera for the sum of $3,000 in the early 1860s. He was a financier from Sandusky, and he built his summer mansion out there. Had 15 rooms, and that castle turret looking thing, that was an observatory because he was an amateur astronomer. Now Cook was best known for financing early railroads like the Continental Railroad, and he also financed part of Abraham Lincoln's election. and he financed some things early on in the Civil War. And his family owned that island for several generations, and then they sold it to a man named Julius Stone. Julius Stone in turn donated it in his father's name to Ohio State University, and they hold it today. Now that concrete block building out on the end, that is the Stone Freshwater Marine Research Laboratory. And the entire upper floor is dormitories, and students go there in the summertime to study freshwater marine biology. Off to the left, that is the Crow's Nest. That is a private yacht club, and that yellow building they're housed in, that was originally a hotel. And right now we're coming up on the Put-in Bay Yacht Club. This is the oldest yacht club in the state of Ohio. It was started in 1886. And coming up on our right, this is Miller's Marina. Now the Miller Ferry, they come in here and dock when they're not in use. And up until 1972, Millers used to come in here and drop passengers off. However, that year during the winter, there were some really serious storms we call nor'easters went through here and wiped out the docks. So then they started coming in at Lime Kiln Dock, which is at the other end of the island, and they've been coming in there ever since. Off to our left, these homes are built in what we call the Victorian style. That's what was popular at the turn of the century. And right now we're traveling on State Route 357. This is the only state route on the island. I hate talking over it. It sounds like I've been drinking when I go over this road. But luckily we have to go over half a mile of it. It is supposedly state maintained. They did put up these concrete blocks here on the right because when those storms wiped out Millers, it also wiped out the road, so that's supposed to keep that from happening anymore in the future. As we go around the bend here, off to your right, you'll get a good view of Perry's Monument. Now Perry's Monument, as you can see, there's scaffolding all at the top there around the observation deck. It is undergoing some extensive repairs. There's been problems with water getting into it ever since it was built. It was completed in 1913. And they're trying to fix it in such a way that won't happen anymore in the future. And it's going to take 2 to 3 years. Off to our right is Oak Point State Park. This is the smallest state park in the state. It consists of about 1 acre. It is obviously undergoing some renovations here. We do have another state park, but it's at the other end of the island. It's, we have the campgrounds and boat ramps and swimming area. Off to our right, that red brick building over there, that is the Aquatic Center. That is run by the Department of Natural Resources, and it is an educational type facility. But due to cutback, they're only open 2 months out of the year, and they're not open yet. They should be open enough in a couple weeks. And off to the right here, this white building, that is part of Stone Laboratories, and that used to be a federally funded fish hatchery. And right now, the area we're in is called Beach Point. This is pretty well mostly a residential area. They used to have an ice house in this area. They cut blocks of ice out in the wintertime. They didn't have refrigeration to form the battles. It is a private island. They have their own airport. And I understand it once had connections with the Cleveland Mafia. I fished out near there already, and they patrol it with Doberman. Now this area used to be called the Actors Colony, and it wasn't actually actors. It was vaudevillians, and they came here in the summertime and they'd brush up their old acts or work on new acts, and they would practice them by having them in the local establishments before they took them out on the road again in the fall. On the right here in this brown house, there lived an actress called Anne Harding. I do remember her. She was an actress in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I remember her from the 50s, not the 30s. But she appeared in her last film in 1956. It was called The man in the gray flannel suit was Gregory Peck, Jennifer Jones, and Frederick March. Now the original inhabitants here, of course, were the Indians. They did do some traffic here, but basically they used these islands as stepping stones to get to Canada. Then in the 1770s, an outfit called the Connecticut Land Company laid claim to all of northwest Ohio, and that included the islands out here. And they sold 5 islands out here to a man named Judge Pierpont Edwards. This island was kind of a crown jewel there. Several of them were not even inhabitable. But he never set foot here, and they did do some lumbering, and I don't know why he bought them. He never really seemed to take much interest in them. But his family owned the islands for about 4 generations, and they never set foot on them either. Then in the 1840s, settlers started coming in, mostly farmers and fishermen. And then in 1854, a man whose name was Jose de Rivera came here. He had been born in Spain and came to the United States as a young man by way of Puerto Rico. And he worked his way up in the business world. By the time he came here to South Pass Island, he was pretty wealthy. Now, he wanted to buy just this island from the Edwards descendants. He was very enchanted with this island, just loved it. But they didn't want to sell just this island. They were kind of anxious to get rid of all 5 of them. So they sold all 5 islands to him for the sum of $44,000. Now, De Rivera started out raising sheep here, but that didn't work out too well. And around 1860, Valentine Dolan convinced him to plant vineyards. Grapes grow very well in here because there's a lot of phosphorus in the soil, which grapes like. And we have a little longer growing period because being surrounded by the warm water in the fall, we have about a 10 to 12 day longer growing period than on the mainland. So De Rivera eventually began plotting the island out into 10-acre plots, which he sold to the mostly German immigrants who came here. And he got them to plant vineyards, and he opened up a winery. When he first started selling those plots, they sold for $10 an acre, and within 10 years they were selling for $1,500 an acre. On either side of the road here, these old barns, these are part of his original farm. Off to the right there, that round stone building, that was his smokehouse. His home originally sat here, but they moved it to the cave area where they planned to make it into a museum type thing one of these days. They said with the economy fixed up, so I'll find out about that. Now, at one time, this island was 60% covered in vineyards. There's about 40 acres left today, and just about all of them are owned or leased by Heinemann Winery. When Prohibition came along, there were about 24 wineries here on the island, and the only one left standing was Heinemann Winery. These vineyards here on the left, they were planted in the early 1900s, and today all the vineyards on this island are still picked by hand. The Heinemanns get just about all their grapes from South Bass, North Bass, and Middle Bass. The growing conditions are pretty well the same on all 3 islands. North Bass is almost completely covered in vineyards, only has about 13 year-round residents. Now, one of the ways, I don't want to wait an hour or whatever it takes, the winery's right there across the street. You can see that depot-looking area where they pick up. In here we have the Butterfly House, the caves, of course, putt-putt golf. We also have the Antique Car Museum. And the Antique Car Museum is in this brown building ahead of us, and now listen, you're going to hear anybody say this once today, it's free. You won't hear that word on this island again. There's mostly Model A's and Model T's in there. A lot of them came here as new cars. Those were very popular cars when they first came out because people drove them across the ice in the wintertime, and if they went through the ice, you could get out of them in a hurry. And some of those cars in there have been at the bottom of the lake, some of them more than once. It's only, like I said earlier, 20 to 30 feet deep in here. So if you know where it went down in the winter, you can go back in the spring and fish it out. Now the putt gulls here on the left, and on the right is Perry's Cave. The entrance to the cave is inside here. And just below us is the butterfly house. And a train will be through every hour up until Vera on land he donated. And if you look at the back there, you can see that door going in that lean-to area. That's where the teacher lived. Now that's the original bell and the original flag staff. And like I said, they opened in 1855. The teacher had to take care of all the maintenance, do the chop the wood, start the fire. And they contracted for 4-month contracts. They had 4 months in the winter and 4 months in the summer. And the first teachers here were men. That's why I'm saying you kind of think about a schoolhouse like that as having a school marm, you know. Huh. Now they opened in 1855, and at that time they had 12 students enrolled, but they say there was never more than 6 in class at any one time, and some days none of them showed up, because back then kids were expected to be home helping with the chores. They didn't value education that much. So they opened in 1855, and they graduated their first student in 1895. Now, at one time at the turn of the century, they did have doctors here. And in the year 1932, they had a doctor who was going to cross the lake in his car to visit a patient on Middle Bass Island. He had his family with him, his wife and 2 sons, and the car went through the ice and they all 4 drowned. Tourism, as I said earlier, was a much bigger industry here at the turn of the century than it is now. But then, when automobiles started becoming more popular, people didn't really travel by steamship that much anymore. They kind of started going by the way. And then World War I came along and people didn't travel much at all. Then after that, we get Prohibition. That was really the last nail in the coffin, because we lost all of our wineries and the main reason people came here. Then we hit the Depression, then World War II. So things didn't really start coming back here until the 1960s. Off to the right there, that old white building, that was originally the entrance to the Mammoth Cave. Now that is the largest cave on the island. However, in 1952, they discovered cracks in the ceiling and decided it was unsafe, which I guess it was, because in 55 part of the ceiling did collapse. So we only have the 2 open now. Now we're coming up here now on the Ghost Restaurant is on the upper level here, and the Chocolate Cafe is on the lower level. They also have a chocolate museum. Now this building was originally at the turn of the century, it was a winery. Out behind that winery in the early 1900s was the Put-in Bay firehouse. However, that burned down. People ask me if there's ever piracy on the lake. Actually, we still have pirates today. There was some during Prohibition, but nobody was going to report that their illegal alcohol got held up. A lot of it went through here because we're close to Canada. They'd hide it in the caves and take it over at night on a dark night with a rowboat. And last year we had at least 2 acts of piracy that I knew of because I saw it in the paper. Guys that go up alongside some fishermen, put guns. They take the fishermen's wallets and their fishing equipment, even took their fish, and then throw the keys to the boat overboard. Haven't heard of it happening this year yet. Off to the right is our Mother of Sorrows Catholic Church. This is a beautiful church. The original was out on Put-in Bay Road, and they just kind of outgrew it. This one was built in the 1920s. And it is a beautiful church on the inside. It's made out of Kelly's Island limestone. And on the left is St. Paul's Episcopal Church. Now this one was started by J. Cook, and it was built in 1865, and that is the original church. We just put a new steeple on, and they finally got, one of the guys had a chicken on top. It's a rooster. That was a common thing with churches at that time, so we're trying to keep it, you know, as much original as possible. Like I said, that is the original church there. It's one of the oldest churches in the state of Ohio. And as I said, the kids go home for lunch home. They're finally got it chiming again, the carillon. This carillon here on the right, there's 4 bells on there, chimes every hour. It wasn't, they just started it again this week. But the 4 bells represent 4 EMTs who were flying to Kelly's Island during a storm to pick up, so it was 1983, to pick up a heart attack victim. And their plane went down in the water and they were all 4 killed. One of them had graduated here from the school here, he's just 23. He had graduated from the Put-in Bay School. This was built around 1920. And it is the only school in use today on the island. There's between 80 and 90 students in there at any given time. And this year we are graduating 13 students. The most we have ever graduated
Mary
is
did
14,
want me to take that.
and that was in the early 1970s. But this year we have 13, but it took us a set of twins and a set of triplets are in there. There were 4 years we didn't have any, and there were 8 years when we had only 1. My boss graduated from there. He always said they graduated 10th in his class, but there was only 10 in the class. And he almost didn't make it. On the left here is the cellar cache, and that started out as a blacksmith shop. And next to that is Airborne and Put-in Bay Brewing. That started out as a firehouse. Just as I was telling somebody about, there's a really nice historical museum down this alleyway here. They have a lot of really interesting stuff. Pictures of the fire that burned down the hotel or the colonial building here. I wish we could go back in there to drop off, but we can't because there's no place for us to get turned around. On the right, that's Tippers there, and that's one of the 2 restaurants that are open in the wintertime. Spent a lot of time in there last year from 4 to 7 when they had half-price drinks. Off to the right is Jose de Rivera Park. Now this ground was donated to the village on the condition it be kept as a park. De Rivera donated it. He was really anxious to see this area develop. He came here a wealthy man and he died broke. And Valentine Doler came here poor and he died wealthy. De Rivera, when he came here and decided to live here, he turned his business interests over to his 2 sons, and they apparently weren't very good businessmen because before long they had him bankrupt. Now, off to the left is the bay where Commodore Perry anchored his boats at the time of the Battle of Lake Erie. This is a naturally protected harbor in here. Now, Perry and the War of 1812 was when the Battle of Lake Erie took place, but the battle itself took place in 1813, about 7 miles northwest of here. It was in September of 1813, and the battle lasted a little over 3 hours. And they say it was a very bloody battle, that 3 out of every 4 sailors were killed. And Perry had his flagship shot out from under him, so he transferred the flag to the Niagara and continued with the battle. If he had lost that battle, this would now probably be part of Canada. But it gave the United States control of the Great Lakes. It was the first time in modern history that the British fleet had ever been defeated. If you read about the history of it, or look at the history of it at the monument, it was really kind of one of those accidental wins, you know? This film moved on several different people's parts. But now Perry was only 27 at the time of that battle. And he didn't live to be very old. He died of a tropical disease off the coast of South America when he was in his mid-30s. Now the visitor center is open. And they have a lot of interesting historical stuff in there. Now that monument is 352 feet high. That makes it the 3rd highest national monument in the country. The highest isn't for Washington. Washington Monument's 2nd highest. The highest one is 650 some feet. street is the arches at St. Louis. Those are the highest, which I didn't even know they were a national monument until I started working here. And it's called the Victory and International Peace Memorial. The International Peace Memorial part is a tribute to the fact that the United States and Canada have the world's longest undefended borders. Now, if you wish to get off here, there will be no pictures.